Can I keep up with AI as I dive back into the larger realm of VFX? Who am I, you might ask? I'm Jared, a VFX artist at Glitch Productions. I studied formally for 2 years in Australia, but I don't have the same experience working in big budget films and large production pipelines at studios like ILM, DNEG, but I do think I have a pretty solid grasp on this topic. I've been making short films and creating for a good half of my life. I started in iMovie before moving my way up to Premiere Pro, After Effects, and then eventually in my later years in high school, I started picking up Blender. I was bad, really bad, but it's gotten me to where I am now. These days I have a large focus in simulation work in a Houdini. Houdini's really been gaining traction these past few years. There's so many more resources to learn this brain-bending software. On the other hand, I feel like all these other skills I've learned along the way have kind of been going to waste. So join me as I dive back into the realm of creating and I put my skills up against the current state of AI. So we're finally at our spot. We found a nice little alleyway. Been walking around the Sydney CBD for like an hour until I finally found this spot. It's not exactly like what was in the AI prompt, but you know, we get a bit of creative freedom here. Now, I was really ill prepared for coming out here and shooting, so I don't have any tracking markers. Now that I'm out here, from what I remember, some of the things I have to keep in mind is that when I'm shooting on my camera, I'm making sure that my shutter speed is actually double or maybe just 0.5 times what it should be. Typically when you're filming, you want to make sure that your shutter speed is double your frame rate. So if I'm shooting at 24, I want to be at 1/50th because there's no really 1/48th, at least not on my camera. So I'm going to be shooting at maybe 1/100th of a second to make sure there's not as much motion blur and my tracking points can really stick onto these pieces of dirt on the ground and rubbish. As you can see, we've got our beautiful alleyway with a bunch of rubbish on the ground and things like this and this, a coffee cup, the stop sign, a lot of things that are really contrasty and I can latch onto to just track and make sure that the footage is as still as possible. Thankfully, for my first project back into doing all this, we're shooting in a nice geometric space. You got a nice wall, long wall on either side and a flat ground. Anyway, we've got a nice rectangular, not square, rectangular sort of space. So it'd be very easy to track and very easy to create guide geometry to sort of base our scene off of and make sure the track comes out pretty clean and nice. Now that we've got our footage, I have to relearn Blender. Now, I haven't used this software since high school, and back in the day I was making projects that I thought were absolute gas, but coming back, yeah, they were just hot ass. For the 3D tracking aspect, I decided to just do it inside of Blender. There's a ton of great tracking software out there like 3D Equalizer, Synthesize, and even F-Spy for more static shots. But yeah, I just didn't really want to pay for those softwares yet. So even though there's all of this software out there, Blender's gonna have to do for now. For now, let's open up Blender. I imported my footage into the scene and went over to the track panel and hit set scene frames. Made sure to prefetch the frames so the playback was not cheeks. Now you can track individual points and really dial in the track. Or you can be lazy like me and just let the software detect the points for you. Make sure you set that thing wide so you can collect as many points as you need. Hot tip, you can create a version of your footage where you crank up the contrast to make certain areas of the image really pop for the software to track these points. I went over to the Solve tab and just kept on slowly withering down the doo-doo tracks until I got a solve error under 0.3. I set my scale, floor, and origin for setting up my tracking scene and letting the software create my 3D camera and a simple object. I had to manually create some geometry, which I could then take into Houdini to create the simulation aspect of the shot. But once it's all lined up, we moved to Houdini. Inside Houdini, I brought in the camera and the geo into the scene and created a brick pattern, just like the wall in the shot. And I tried to match it up roughly to be the same. To give it some depth, I duplicated the wall back another 2 times. This is gonna make it feel like it's not just one layer of brick. I won't get too much into the specifics of the simulation, but I set up my constraints, the geometry, some active and inactive areas, which will determine which parts move and which parts don't, and a high-res geometry. After a few iterations, we got our result. To stick the texture onto the object, I grabbed the first frame of the footage. Then I projected the first frame position of the UVs onto the camera. Now, by itself, it looks a little bland. So we added our debris pass, created some light smoke for the main pieces, and then boom. For the large smoke coming out of the hole, it was quite simple. Just created a sphere, added some noise, created our fields, which will source the volume, and emit it outwards. I really am simplifying it, but it's for another day. Now for rendering and scene assembly, I cached the smoke elements as VDBs and used alembics for all the other elements that had actual geometry. Now, why alembics? For me, at least compared to FBX files, they're a bit better at compressing and storing a lot more of the information. So you end up with all of your attributes in a bit of a smaller file size. Now that everything's imported and we've got our UVs attached to that object, we get that image of the first frame, bring that into the software and attach that image to the shader. And set the floor to be a shadow catcher, so we have shadows, and there we go. We've got the image sticking to the geometry, and it blends pretty good. Now, after I finished, I realized I'd forgotten about the HDRI, but I also don't have the 360 camera, which can create a custom HDRI for me. So I just set the scene color to white. Yeah, just bumped that up and down until it gave me the color I needed. Yeah, in hindsight, that custom HDRI would have made my life a lot easier in this situation. Once it was all set up, had our lighting, our textures, our geo, everything we needed for this Blender aspect, I rendered it all as EXRs. Now, coming to the end of it, there probably are a lot more tricks I could be learning just to make my life that bit easier or to even add that extra bit of realism. But for the sake of this, you know, we're going to be taking it in stages, and I do want to come back to a lot of this for future videos. So once it was all out, I brought those EXRs into After Effects. Now, why did I choose After Effects? I learned Nuke, but don't know about you, but I don't have $2 to $4 grand lying around per year to pay for the software. That'd do some. I took the footage into After Effects and just did some light color correction to make sure that my rendered plate and the scene blended in terms of color. You know, just don't want them to look like two complete strangers meeting for the first time.
Hello?
But yeah, here's the result. Coming back to doing all of this, even though it's been 2 years, you know, it puts a lot of things in perspective. All the things I've forgotten, even gaps in my knowledge. It's hard to know whether it's actually bad or not. You know, as the artist, I've shown people the shot and they say it looks good, but being the one creating it, you just can't help but notice all the flaws, all the things that went wrong, all the things that could be better, but you just don't really know how to make it better at that current point. It just brings it to a point where you have to just be willing to push out what you have at a current point, because it's the perfectionist curse. You know, constantly obsess about what could be better, and you constantly try and improve it. You're never happy with it until you end up never showing it to the world. You know, nobody knows how good you could have been because you never put it out there. You were too worried about making it perfect that nobody even knew about it in the first place. Now, I did this as sort of something for myself, just because recently I've had a lot of ideas about things I could be making, but they just never made it out there. And putting up my work, you know, which has a person's heart and soul in it, up against AI is quite interesting, because there's a thing of people always saying that AI is gonna take over the artist's job. It's gonna make us not needed anymore, and it's scary, because the people who want to put out good work may now be too scared to even put it out, because now there's some sort of chat prompt that can just make it. You know, with AI these days, over the past 5 years, it's gotten a lot better, like a lot better. It's to the point where people are now being fooled as to whether things are actually AI or not. And that is scary. But the other side of this coin is that it's taking away a lot of what art is. You know, is art the end product? Yes, but it creates a separation between the art and the artist. You know, if I was to go and tell a painter to paint this for me, who made it? I can't say I made it. Like, sure, the artwork is mine because I commissioned someone to do it for me, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make me an artist. It is the same sort of thing, this kind of epidemic that's happening right now, where AI is making it so easy for people to create these artworks, and people are saying, oh, you know, I told it what to make, so I'm the artist. But it's kind of like, there is an element to it where that is art in a sense, you know, it's creativity, but being an artist is being able to bring it to life, being able to control the certain elements of how it looks, you know, not just leaving it up to fate in terms of whatever this AI model may spit out for you. Look, I will say that it has its use cases, AI. I feel like it is great for solo artists who need, you know, quick sort of references for how something could look. Because people may have very abstract ideas and don't really know where to start in terms of putting it together. And these chat prompts like Mid-Journey and stuff, they are pretty great for kind of word vomiting an idea and sort of getting iterations on the potential look of something. But I feel like it shouldn't create this separation between the art and the artist. Yeah, I have seen a lot of this going around where people are promoting the idea that it can replace you. But I feel like if you live in fear, just like that perfectionist curse, it's gonna stop you from really finding out how good you could be. To anyone who is watching this, don't let it stop you from creating.